Alright, Hatchet Gaming here, and today we are going to be discussing the Darkzone and PvP, and some of the changes that need to be made or feel like they should be made to make it more balanced, and some of the other bugs that are being experienced during Darkzone play. So let's jump right into it. One of the things, I'm not sure if I'm going to be right at the time it's going to occur, but I do have a few points in this gameplay that's going to be behind this video, or this voiceover, of some of the issues I'm going to be discussing. I'm going to attempt to time it about right, but we will see how it goes. And if it doesn't, then I'm still going to explain it, and then you'll just have to kind of find out where it is depending on how it's edited. So, the Darkzone. In particular, Darkzone PvP. I mean, the PvE portion feels right where it should be, where you can particularly run past the landmarks or even standard red enemies without having to worry about something one-shotting you if, say, you're rogue or manhunt. So the PvE NPCs are in a good place. Sure, if you go through certain areas, they can focus fire, and you get all of them on one player, that player's going to drop. But I feel that's how it should be. So that's not the issue. The issue comes down to how PvP is and the balance in which it is going or not going. I guess it's a better way to put it. And there, with armor, how it's working, because that's one of the things I want to discuss is armor. The way the heal, you can throw it down and it just, you can see where it's supposed to be, but it doesn't show up, so you don't get it, or when it does pop, you're already dead, so it doesn't really help matters. And I wanted to make sure I had that clip of it happening, and here, about here in the play, shows me trying to put my heal down on one of the teammates that I was with for this manhunt, trying to heal him up, and you can clearly see it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me because I try to run into it, and he ends up dropping. And he ended up dying because all the rest of the team got too far away from him, so he ended up having to respawn, come back, and keep going. But the point is, there's even points within this stretch here where I clearly was hitting the button for a med kit, and it wasn't hitting the med kit. I wasn't getting it. And I ended up dying because of it, because I couldn't proc anything. Then the other problem is when they do proc, and you can end up being basically invulnerable with a lot of toughness. Because in my build that I'm running now, I typically have 463,000 toughness, almost 464. And if I have on the move, critical save, and booster shot all active at the same time, my toughness goes to 1.7 million. And I don't feel that toughness number should be quite that high and have all that type of factored stuff in So for that time, you're basically invulnerable. I do not feel that's the right. It makes too much unbalanced type of play to where it's too easy to proc certain talents and make an entire group, if they are playing right, pretty much invulnerable to damage. And I just feel that that's not what we are looking for as players. So some sort of balance has to come in. Also, the thing that I would like to see as far as balance is, if you wanted to play a tanky player, there a non-person that isn't playing a tank would still be able to take out that tanky player. It may take a little longer for them to do it, but they'd at least have a fair chance regardless. And how mitigation works, I would like to see a little bit of reworking there, because requiring armor on every slot possible and the highest possible rolls towards armor on mods just doesn't leave any room for diversity. Doesn't leave any room to say, hey, this other skill would be nice to have, or the mod over here could help my build drastically, but it drops the mitigation in my armor, so I can't use it. Like, mostly I prefer playing skill build type support roles, keeping my team alive, buffed, and stuff, things like that. But it's really hard to play it when you have to have armor everywhere, and those type of builds could severely benefit from skill power on the backpack, for example, or certain other statistics that you can't have because you have to have armor, like on the knee pads for the exotic damage resilience, or on holster with the skill haste. Like, yeah, you could still have the skill power on masks since you can't roll armor on that, but it's just a minuscule amount compared to if you had a good roll on the mask and the backpack of gaining that 20,000, particularly if that backpack was a specialized. Just, it would be a big help to a build in the long run, but until something is done about armor, because they try to do the balancing where stagger and armor shred, well, does apply to PvP, but it doesn't feel like it applies enough to make that big of a difference, as you can see in this gameplay, because in this particular build, I am running a enemy armor damage on 45% on my SMG and 67%, as I was saying, that I have 67% enemy armor damage on my assault rifle. So there shouldn't be a way that how it interacts with players, the scaling of that, it feels too low and unbalanced, especially if you're going up against these higher armor, higher mitigation players. In a way, I think mitigation is probably too high, and how to achieve it is probably too much of a balance. say a good cap for that would probably be between 40 and 50% versus trying to get up to the whole 55, 56% plus more with a robust and sturdy holster. So yes, it is able to get higher, but having that high, it, with some of the mixes that you can do, it just doesn't feel the way it needs to. Like, there's no real balance in PvP where you can get the squads. There's no real specialization or diversity, which is what I'm trying to get towards. I want to see where armor is not best in slot, is not the best possible choice unless it fits your particular build and you're specifically going to be a tanky player, and someone that chose not to be that tanky player doesn't get penalized and just dropped in an instant because of it. That's how I feel it should be, is you're getting penalized if you pick anything other than armor. And having any other talent on your guns but destructive makes you weaker. But I have a decent amount of DPS in the build that you see. You'll see my menu a couple times, I think, during the gameplay, and you can clearly see I have almost 54% mitigation. It's not necessarily where I would want it based on the meta now, but it's not bad. And I just will get, even in a 1v1 situation, I just get dropped. And there's no rhyme or reason on how I got dropped. Oh, it needs to be more thought into how it's going to be versus what actually comes out of it to make PvP and the Darkzone more fun. Because there's so many different stats for armor in the main stat slot that you have to have armor over unless you're building it solely for a PvE build. And it's the same with the backpack. Like skill haste, there's skill power, there's crit hit damage that would be great in some builds, but you can't roll that now just because of the way it works. It just feels off. And you're severely penalized for picking it. Like on the holster, you could very easily have skill haste on your holster and it'd be great, but you can't because it feels penalized under if you're going to take that build into PvP. And I just want to see some balance between not having armor is in every slot to where having some armor might be good, but not on every piece. Having ways to kind of specialize your build versus armor, and then hope everything else rolls where you want it. That, to me, just, it's not where it needs to be. I don't like having not having any type of specialization, and it doesn't feel right. It's clearly not where it needs to be, and there is clearly a lot more that needs to happen versus where it is in PvP, because I think the 1.4 and 1.5 changes to PvE works great. It's where it needs to be. That's the best thing that could have happened to the division. But now we need that type of balancing and that type of way to make build diversity within the builds themselves actually means something. Because the way it is now, it's not working. Something needs to change. And having armor as best in slot, or at least the interaction between armor and player versus player damage, is probably the best place to address it. Because I've tested many different ways to try to do builds, and it doesn't work. There's really no type of diversity versus any type of build. If you don't do it the exact same way as normal, then you're just going to end up being stuck. And that just doesn't feel the way we want it as players, or where it needs to be. Something in it needs more. I'm not a programmer. I don't claim to know what would help the most, but something needs to change. And I love the idea of being able to come up with diversity and having more options for builds versus anything else. As right now, it's just too stale. There's no room to having any type of specialized build, or any build that is not focused on trying to get as much mitigation and toughness as possible and have high DPS. There's no diversity in any shape or form of getting a nice builds put together, because everything is so focused on survivability and hoping that they have enough survivability to keep them alive. And that just doesn't feel that's where it should be. As you'll see in the gameplay, there are points that there's no real balance. Yeah, we win some of it with coordination, but really, in the long run, there isn't that much tactics that is possible to implement because of the way PvP works, the damage scaling works. And until that is fixed, I don't see any type of change being able to occur. And yeah, I have spent many hours in the Darkzone. I enjoy it. I enjoy the PvP element when it's enjoyable. It's been the best PvP in a while, but there's still changes that need to happen, and it does still have that little bit of direction and versatility that does need to happen. But this is my take. I'm sure I will be doing more videos on this as ideas come to try to better help balance PvP and make it a much more enjoyable experience for all those that enjoy it. This has been Hatchet Gaming, and I'll see you all in the next one, and I'll find you all in the DZ. And if you did enjoy this video, go ahead and give it a like, show that you're going to support, leave your comments if you have any ideas, so we can get this type of a conversation going, so we can have a much better, more balanced PvP.